Thank you, Oleg. Hi, everyone. I'm Marina Velikova from Finland Relocation Services. And as Oleg said, today we will talk about how employers in Nordics support their employees during their relocation processes. I have here today Linh Pham from Rovio Entertainment, John Nylund from Next Games, and Natalie Mellin from Resolution Games. Could you guys introduce very quickly yourselves and perhaps use also the moment of glory to mention just a couple of words about your company, and also I'm sure that candidates would be very interested to know what kind of skill sets are you looking for at the moment. Natalie, would you like to start?
Of course. So, hi everyone. I can't see you, unfortunately, but I am very happy to be here. So, a little bit about myself to start off with. I worked with people and culture questions for soon almost 20 years. Most of the time specialized in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but touched on pretty much all different areas of HR. I worked for companies like King. I've consulted for Avalanche, Paradox, and a few other gaming studios as well. But currently, I'm at Resolution Games. We are a VR and AR studio, so we focus solely on that. We've been around for about 6 years, and we're recruiting heavily, recruiting all types of skills, but programmers, 3D artists, 2D artists, and so forth. Lovely being here.
Thank you. Linh, would you like to continue?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's Linh from Rovio, Finland. And I'm working at the talent acquisition team. Rovio started with Angry Birds games, mobile games, for more than 10 years ago, and is still a big part of our current portfolio. And currently we have about 500 people from more than 50 nationalities. We have 7 studios in Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, and Turkey. A big chunk of my work focuses on relocation and relocating people to Finland and Sweden, and just started for Canada. So I'm really happy to be in this panel today.
Thank you. And John?
Yes, hi. So I'm also super happy to be here and to hopefully be able to answer some questions that there might be. I'm working, as mentioned, for Next Games. I'm the talent acquisition manager here. Been working for the company for about 1.5 years, and within the recruitment side of things, I've been working for over 10 years. So seen a bit of this and that. Next Games, I guess, could be good to mention. We are a Helsinki-based studio. We create our own games for the mobile domain. And we work very closely with different partners. We're probably best known for the Walking Dead games that we've done so far, but we also just launched the Stranger Things Puzzle Tales. So look out for that out on the market. In regard to recruitment, we have some new projects coming up. So we are pretty heavily recruiting people on all fronts. So anything from arts to engineering to UI, QA, analytics, so on and so forth. We have quite a bit of a selection going on at the moment. So don't hesitate to check us out.
Great. So I was thinking to start first off, if you can guys tell me a little bit, or can you give some percentage of how many of the recruited talent comes from outside of the country where you're recruiting from? Basically, for Rovio, you mentioned, Linh, that you have studios in different countries. But I guess you have different positions for the different studios. So can you tell how much of the talent is coming outside of those countries? How much of relocation do you do, basically?
I think it has been increasing during the pandemic, which is very interesting. During 2020 and 21, we have about 50% of the hires. So that's quite a lot of people relocating to from outside Rovio office locations. And yeah, it's quite common. Previously, I think we had about 30% or so, and it has increased since then.
Okay, yeah, so quite big part. How about Natalie? How is in Resolution Games?
Pretty much the same. So I probably should have mentioned as well as my fellow panelists did. We are based in Stockholm. That's where we have our studio. We have a few other people elsewhere, but the games development happens here in Stockholm. And during the last sort of 12 months, about 50% of all the people that we've hired have come in from other countries. All types of countries, all geographies, no specific preference there. Although we do have a lot of Portuguese-speaking people right now.
Okay. Do you see that it's related to the technical background, or it's just maybe internal referrals?
It's a little bit of a mix, actually. We've had a few referrals, but somehow the Portuguese-speaking people really likes us, and it is a mix between people coming from Portugal or Brazil, so it's not the same. And I'm probably going to be hounded now to say it's not the same language, and they it's very different Portuguese, but yeah. If they speak slowly, they can understand.
Yeah. How about John? How is it at Next Games? How much international talent, or actually foreign talent, do you recruit outside of Finland?
Well, quite a bit. I mean, if we look at the company statistics a little bit, we're about 120, 130 employees at the moment, and we have people from 27 different nationalities. So it's always been kind of a key strategic point for us to look at international skills. And this year, I think up until this point, we're at about between 60 and 70% of all recruitments we've done are relocations from all over the place. So we're pretty heavy on the relocation side, to be honest. And it's up. As Linh mentioned previously, it's up from last year, which is quite interesting. So there has been a clear kind of shift, and I think maybe the working remotely might impact that in a certain way. Like people are more open-minded to look at alternatives and so on. But that's personal opinion, so I won't put any data or statistics on that.
Yeah. And how does the recruitment process, does it even vary when you have a candidate outside of the country? Maybe John, you can continue on this.
Yeah. I mean, I think during the pandemic, everything's been similar. Like we have the same steps, we have the same stages. Now when we haven't had people come to the office for obvious reasons, everything's done very much the same up until the signing of the contract where we then go into the relocation part of things. But basically we treat everybody equal. We go through the same steps. The only difference might be, pre-pandemic, local people might come sooner to the office and actually have the interviews at the office compared to international candidates where the logistics is a part of it. But we would always arrange for a flight to Finland to see the office, to meet the people. We'll have to see how things develop, post-pandemic, and how for instance, a hybrid model at the office might impact things and so on. It might be that we're more inclined to kind of continue with a more remote approach, but it's probably also then going to be down to the candidates themselves, like what the preferences are, and accommodating for those factors as well.
Yeah. Linh, how about that? Or Natalie, yes.
I can just add, I kind of agree with what John was saying, but the only, I guess, main difference is that we do offer them a specific session if they want to talk specifically around the country and more specifically about the city, Stockholm. Just want to make sure that obviously they get to do their own homework as well, but want to help them out in finding the information that's relevant and interesting for them.
Well, yeah. That's actually a good point. I mean, that's something that we of course do as well, and we offer them the opportunity to talk with people that would have relocated, preferably from the same country, to actually talk about real life experiences. And I think that maybe could be a bit of a top tip here, that you shouldn't be afraid of asking for that opportunity if you're considering, just to kind of get a more broader experience background from somebody who's actually gone through the same process. But we tend to typically also have the offer sessions are done during a call, so that's where we would also cover these relocation related matters as well. But it is a good good point to raise, Natalie.
And it would be a combination of exactly what you just said as well. So I don't have anything to add.
Okay. So my next question is, so John, you mentioned a little bit that basically has made the process more or less the same, or it's mostly remote. But has your reach been restricted? Meaning, in terms of when you're considering candidates that are abroad, and we have the pandemic factor in now during the past almost 1.5 years going. Do you have any restrictions? Has your reach been restricted because of the pandemic? And also, has the relocation process, what kind of aspects do you consider basically when you have the pandemic also in place, when you consider the different locations?
Yeah, if we think about the reach, that hasn't changed. I mean, hires that we've done just this year, we've had hires from the US, from Russia, from South America, from Europe, from Australia. So we really aren't limiting the geographical location at all. So we're just as open-minded in regard to that as before. I would say in regard to things to consider during the pandemic has been more tied into factors like, you might have embassies closed in certain countries, which means that you cannot go through the same process as quickly as normally. And you actually have a big question mark in regard to, what could the potential start date be? So then we need to think about, other ways of mitigating any risk that there might be for candidates. So we've had a lot of, thought put into what do we do in case certain things do not pan out. Like we've had situations where somebody needs a marriage certificate from the state for translations to put in with the paperwork, and suddenly it's taken them 2 months to get that from the state. So that puts a little bit of a hamper on things and something we didn't maybe expect. So having clear processes in place then to make sure that people can actually join in and start working for us, even if they are remote, for a set amount of time, and how we treat that process throughout this is very important, because clarity toward the candidate is the main thing. Like as long as we can explain what's going to happen if certain things happen, and that we have contingencies and how we manage those situations, what that requires the candidate to do, and making sure that they're comfortable with that. That's really important. So we've had to think about these contingencies a lot more and actually have a structure for it and have it in place. And we've had to resort to them multiple times, and so far we've always had a very good end result in regard to these things. Other than that, we try to push the process the same as before, but there are factors impacting, and just being prepared for them and trying to think ahead and having a clear process and thought regarding how we manage the situation is the key thing. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, it does. How about the others?
I guess it's the same for us as well. Now thinking about it, I think we have people coming from 5 continents. So it's all over the world during the pandemic, which is very, very good. And we also have difficulty, exactly as John said. However, we make plan, and when the plan doesn't go as planned, then we try to make backup plan, and also try to make it work with the business and with the hires, as so the business is one thing that, of course, we try to have new team members. So maybe the resourcing plan in the team has to change, but also the delay affects the new hires much more than the business.
Yeah.
And I guess it's very similar to us, although we're a much smaller company, or much smaller than Rovio, a little bit smaller than Next. So we don't have maybe as everything planned out, as it sounds like my colleagues here have. But we have a lot of heart and a lot of empathy. I myself have done a relocation twice. So we make sure that we do as much as we can to look into what the plans that we can do. I think the sort of main problems we've been having this year in Sweden has been that the migration office has been a little bit swamped and a bit slower. It's starting to ease up now. And that the restrictions, traveling restrictions, actually when they're about to make the move, those restrictions, you need to keep a close eye on those so they don't change from the date you signed the offer to when you're actually moving.
Yeah. From my experience, we work, of course, with doing the actual relocation service. Close communication with the relocating persons is essential, that they have a safe feeling and they know where things are at and what they can do to make things advance. But then at some stage, if it's up to the authorities, then it's just keeping them calm and patient until the process moves forwards. And what kind of, from your experience, what have you noticed? Of course, you can share tips on what your companies have in terms of what kind of relocation support do you offer to your new hires? In terms of, have you noticed that is the immigration process something that is particularly difficult, and do you offer this support? What else do you add to the overall package? And is there something else that you have included, for example, some internal practices that are also part of the overall process?
I can start. I definitely think that the visa process is what a lot of people are nervous about. There are also some nervousness around finding an apartment. So we focus a lot on those areas. We work with an expert partner to help them kind of navigate the authorities here in Sweden, since they will most likely be different from the way it's operating in a country where they're coming from. And when it comes to apartments, we offer everyone somewhere to stay for the first sort of 30 days, and we give them a lot of advice. And then, as John was saying before, we try to connect them as much as possible, at least from when they arrive in Sweden, but also if it's possible before then, with someone who's done a similar move, so they can get points and tips and tricks is probably a better word, what to do. And up till now, no one's taken more than 20 days to find somewhere to stay. And they had animals, which has unfortunately been a little bit more difficult historically here in Sweden to find an apartment or a house where the landlord is allowing pets.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds, that's quite familiar from our perspective. I mean, we do work with Finland Relocation Services, so I don't think there's any shaming, hiding that or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is that we feel that that's been a great support. The candidates have been appreciative that there is somebody talking through what needs to be processed, like what's the paperwork, where should it be sent, what's the schedule, and so on. So, fantastic support from that side. We also have a temporary housing when you arrive, and then support in regard to finding the more permanent residency and helping with setting up bank accounts and all these kind of mundane things. So we get a lot of support from FRS in regard to that. But then we also have a dedicated person with the company who also from the company side make sure that everything keeps on running smoothly. So there are multiple contact points from different angles, also making sure that we can communicate from the company perspective, things relating to what type of computers or equipment would you like to have, making sure that we get that ordered in, what type of workstations you prefer, and this types of things, so that when you actually arrive, everything's set up and everything's really structured. And then even beyond that, the person working with the relocation support from our side then takes that beyond. So for instance, we work with spouse programs and things like that to make sure that if you do relocate with a family, that there is somebody to also connect with for the family side, supporting to integrate to the community from that perspective as well. And then we do provide like language courses from a company perspective and so on and so forth. So I would say that from my perspective, we have a relatively good package. I mean, there's always room to improve, but we do feel that comfort is something important. Like when somebody's considering to change a country, it's very understandable. It's a huge undertaking. It's a big step, and there's a lot of unknowns. So the more we can support in kind of mitigating those questions or sense of risk, it's going to be just so much more of a fun adventure compared to something that would be stressful. And I do want to give a big thanks to FRS. It's been great working with you guys.
Thank you.
And I think, John, that is really good package. And we also provide somewhat similar. And also one thing that I noticed is the housing search, as Natalie also mentioned it, not just in Finland, but also in Finland, not just in Sweden, but in Finland is also could be quite complicated for foreigners coming for the first time here, and they don't have the local language. So that's something that we also invested in. And another topic that we doubled down recently is the tax matter. So previously we have the relocation partner to help with the tax card, but also we try to recently make sure that they have information about the tax system, social security system, and once a year we organize the group tax workshop for everyone relocating to Finland. So when they are here for a few months, they started to understand how the system works, and organizing another workshop, then they know what to do when they need to order the tax card themselves, or then do the tax filing themselves as well. So I think that's also an important factor that we wanted to look into.
That's a very good tip. So I hear all of you are also talking quite a lot about information and how important essential role it plays throughout the whole process. And it would be very interesting to hear, John, you mentioned a little bit what kind of system you have, but it would be also very interesting to hear a little bit some practical tips that you can share. What kind of information sharing process do you have in place? At what stage? What kind of information have you noticed has been important? What kind of channels do you have to support the new incomers? Basically, is it through during the recruitment process or then afterwards? I think, Linh, that's a very good practice to have a little bit aftercare kind of steps that are done later when people have already lived here and maybe they have come across some and they have more questions then. So what kind of practices do you have for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all starts when the offer is being made. Like there, we tend to have a discussion about, looking into the different tools for comparing cost of living costs between countries, and how can you get a better sense of what is take home after taxes in Finland, like understanding the package. So we tend to have a discussion point about that. There are certain links that I tend to share. There's also materials in regard to living in Finland that we can share with candidates to kind of have a better understanding of what to expect and what are the things to look out for and so on. I tend to also have a bit of a discussion about the housing market, just kind of to give tips on what areas could be interesting to look into, like what are the areas that previous employees have moved into, where do people tend to live, what are the benefits of those areas, and so on. So there is a more comprehensive kind of discussion around these things already before the offer goes out. The idea there is that the people will have the opportunity to actually dig into and do their homework, and then look at the offer and have context to the offer to understand kind of what does this actually mean to me. So that's kind of the first step moving forward. And then from there, it's the support for all the paperwork and all that needs to be done there. And as I spoke of previously, but maybe then beyond, once they start with us, we have a very kind of clear induction program. What are the steps? And it always starts with a meeting with the IT department. So we ensure that all the tools are, functioning and they have access to all the right places and so on. So that when they move from that first meeting forward, they know they will be able to connect with all the people that we have set the meetings for and so on, and they have access to all the materials and tips and tricks regarding how to accumulate more information that might be beneficial for the employee. We have a pretty good hobby scene within Next Games. So we actually, as a company, support different hobbies. That can be anything from bridge to beer brewing to Mario Kart, which actually in this case is RC Mario Karts and things like that. So there's a lot of activity beyond just the workplace. As a company, we also give the employees the opportunity to use our spa area, for instance, for private occasions during weekends and so on. So we also give them the kind of space to invite friends and create community events and connect with other people within the company, or maybe invite other people in to participate in these kind of hobby events and so on, to support in the development of social networks, because that is very, very essential. You need to be able to connect with the people around you. I've personally lived in multiple countries. So I've lived in 4 countries in total so far. And I fully recognize that your experience is essentially as good as the people around you. Like if you create good connections with people around you, then you're going to have a great time, even if work sucks. Like, let's be honest, sometimes you have bad days. It happens to all of us. But if you have great people, you can always offload that and you can still find the kind of positive. But you might have the best job in the world, and if you don't have people to share that with, it's not going to be fun. So we do, as a company, try to arrange different ways for people to also long-term interact with each other, find connections, be able to also invite people from outside the company to join into their activities and support them with that, because the social integration part is hugely important.
Mm-hmm.
Can totally second that. And I think in terms of relocation, we usually, during the recruitment process, we usually have, so we have a presentation of working and living in Finland, and usually we share that already at the beginning, or in some cases, then we try to have a relocation call before we make the offer or after making the offer, so that the person has better overview of what they signed up for if they accept the offer. And exactly as John said, providing information about tax, holidays, and living here, so they can prepare the financials when they start coming here to live. And also personally, I try to, after they arrive, have frequent check-ins, so that so I usually divide it into midway and final check-in, so that at least making sure they have everything settled in terms of paperwork registration after about 2 weeks, and then in good progress with housing search. And then after that final check-in, discuss about non-urgent but very important daily life topics, like where do you shop for grocery, or where do you buy food for pets, and furniture stores, etc. And also library, which is really good system in Finland, and they should know that as well. So we discuss all of those topics during our check-ins, and I think having a contact point from company is good as well. So they have a forum to ask questions or to raise concerns, or at least have someone to reach out to, and they may be directed to someone else, but at least have the first contact point there.
Yeah.
I don't think I can add so much more. It's very similar what we do as well. We also have, I'll just call out a couple of things. We also have a guidebook that we send out very early on, and the relocation calls, language lessons, events. Language lessons, we invite spouses to come into the office as well and join those language lessons. And there has been instances where there hasn't been a single employee in the lesson, but only spouses. But again, back to what everyone else has been saying, it's about those connections. But yeah, it's hard to move a country. I definitely personally tend to kind of say that and kind of to, get prepared. There's a lot of stuff that you have to go through, and I feel it's good to be in the right mindset, because it takes a little bit of time to kind of learn how everything is working, not just where groceries are and stuff like that, but also cultural differences, what stereotypically Swedish people are like, and so forth. You want to learn Swedish, but everyone speaks English to you, and that sort of.
Yeah, familiar challenges also in Finland.
Yeah, I think that
what milk to buy, for example. This has been for many foreigners very astonishing that Finland offers. I think it's the same in Sweden. Way too many kinds of milk and cheese.
Well, I think we removed one milk version. We had, light, medium, and heavy, and then we had like super light a while back. But the super light has now disappeared, and now there's only 3 versions.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually, I just noted one thing. I mean, one part that is also extremely important is just talking about what's it like in Finland from like the initial when you move here.
Yeah.
And by that I mean, what is the kind of general language understanding level within the country? Like, how well will you be able to function in the day-to-day? And I always kind of love to use the example of, I have multiple occasions gone to a restaurant or a cafeteria where the waiters and waitresses don't speak Finnish. Like, you can manage with English on a day-to-day level. Mm. You go to the barber shop, you go to the pharmacy, you go to the bank, you'll have good support in English. And I think that's also kind of one of the points also to just raise, that if you speak English, you're going to manage perfectly fine. Because I personally have an experience where people around me didn't necessarily speak English, and I didn't speak the local language, and that became a little interesting, especially going to the barber shop.
Mm-hmm. I want to see a picture.
I might. Let's put it this way: my hair was extremely orange.
Interesting. I also I think it's very good. Also, of course, the language awareness, the language skills, the local English language skills are very important, especially for the first weeks and months and so on. But I really like that your companies are also supporting newcomers in their long-term integration. Offering the language courses is something that really helps with that. So if you think that along with their family on a long-term basis or on a permanent basis, of course, local language then plays a very important role. And this brings me actually to the next topic. You all mentioned spouses and some sort of support that you offer for the spouses. So as we know, I'm not going to even ask this, family plays an essential role in making this huge decision. So I was interested to hear what kind of involvement do you provide for the families during the decision-making process, and then what kind of support do you offer for them after? Basically, when you make an offer, how do you take into account the family members and the whole? Then it's, of course, the relocation process becomes a little bit more complex, but it's just a matter of planning. So how do you handle that part? Who would like to start?
Start?
Mm-hmm.
Our relocation package depends on the persona. So if the person relocates alone or with partner and kids, it would be different from the relocation services that they will receive, but also different from the bonus that they can get, because relocating with 3 people would be very different from with just 1 person. So that's one key difference. And also with partners, we try to understand the plan of the spouse coming here. Do they want to work, or do they want to do something else when they are here, or spend time with their families? So it's sort of we take the customized approach. So if the person wants to work, and if they feel that it would be a bit difficult to find job here in terms of the expertise of the spouse, then we try to provide some info where can they search for jobs in that expertise. And then we provide career coaching service as well after they come here, so they understand the job market. They can get help for their CV and interviews. So that's something that we provide extra in terms of the basic services. Basic service, of course, similar to the employees, immigration, registration, and daycare or school search for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same. Very sort of individual approach. I find that I want to be very mindful and listening to what they want, and they all want very different things. And it all depends a little bit on what the spouse is interested in doing or has a skill set for. But actually, just most recently, we ended up hiring both of them. So it's not on
That's the best option.
We have one case similar as well.
It was fully their decision that they wanted to have it that way. But yeah. Very talented people, and we're very happy to have them both. I guess the one thing that I have noticed, and I think it's the same in Finland, we have obviously very different seasons here, so the weather is very different, but also specifically I think the daylight situation, which depending on where you're coming from in another part of the world, that is something that we like to spend a little bit of time on, and especially for if you're coming over with your family or a spouse who may not have a immediate situation, work, study, whatever it may be. So that's something that we also kind of talk about.
That's actually a great point, because so far almost every single person that has relocated that I've spoken to, they haven't actually ended up complaining about the cold, which initially everybody is so worried about.
Yes.
Rather the fact that the winters are quite dark.
Yes.
Which is why we like to have our holidays during the winter as well, at least to get a week out and down south in the sun, just to reload some batteries. But I mean, yeah, I got to second everything that both Linh and Natalie have said. Maybe the one comment that I would still mention is that, we also do try to, when we have company parties and things like that, invite the spouses along, so that they can also be part of that and find other people, because we are a very international company, so we can offer other people that might have come from the same region or same country, and sharing the experiences is always kind of a good foundation to connect and build relations from. So that's also been something that we found to be quite useful.
Yeah, really good points. We are starting to come to be running out of time, so I'm just going to. I noticed there is quite a few questions in the Q&A section. Thank you everyone for being so active. One important question is, do you offer relocation support only to senior hires, or do you also offer it if it's a question of a more junior or even internship person that you're recruiting?
We offer for everyone, I will say, except for the fact that we haven't had any internships, any relocations for internships. So we haven't actually made a decision, I'm going to be completely honest with, in that regards. But junior, staff level, seniors, yes.
Okay.
We've made the differentiation that if you are a trainee or a junior, that's where we don't offer the relocation there. But then for anything above that, like staff, senior managers, principals, so on, they will all receive relocation support.
I think we have quite similar setup, and we try to also offer the local market job opportunities as well for the junior positions, and we try to do it locally. But then when we need to hire from abroad, then all of the hire from abroad, which is if it's not trainee or interns, then all of them get relocation support, and we try to make it fair for everyone.
I'll ask one last question, Oleg, if it's okay. Just to close, what kind of advice would you give to candidates that are listening today and might be thinking, basically considering to relocate and thinking how should they basically approach this? And then also to colleagues who may be less experienced in the relocation matters, so to other studios, what is your tip to them, advice in overall?
I can start. I think one of the key things that I think it was John who mentioned it is if the company doesn't provide it, ask for to speak to someone who's done a similar move before. It doesn't always have to be that someone's moved from the same countries from you. Just hearing someone who's moved from a different country to the country you're moving to is really helpful. I would also say that think about what you like and want out of your day-to-day life. So are you interested being close to lots of happenings, or do you want to be close to the nature? So you can kind of try to match that. And definitely take in consideration the rest of your family if you're moving with them. How will it work for your kids, for your wife in Sweden, or your husband, sorry. In Sweden, we have a great support system, but you still have to understand and keep that in mind. Mm. And then for colleagues, me coming from a small company, I will say, take small steps and keep iterating. Don't try to kind of take on the full beast to start off with. Instead, try to make some small, big wins, and then keep iterating and add on to it.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would certainly second that. I think, even if you are the applicant and applying for a job, always keep in mind that you are fully allowed to reach out and say, hey, I like this type of support. Can I speak to somebody within the company and so on? It's completely fine to ask. It's better to ask than then to just let it go and not being sure about things. But also think about beyond the company. I mean, there are a lot of different groups of people that for instance, if I were to look at Spain or Switzerland or something like that, there's a community for Finnish people there. So reach out to these communities, talk to people that have relocated from the same country you have, see what experiences they might have, what they can share with you. And it's also a great networking opportunity. If you do end up relocating and you move there, you already have a connection there. Then you can look at events and things and meet people from the same background and culture as yourself. So, there are also other ways of getting information about the country and relocation and what it's like to live in that country than just the company you're talking with. So kind of be open-minded and use these channels as much as possible.
And for me, after doing all of the exercises that John and Natalie mentioned, then the last thing I would say is to manage their own expectation properly so that you can have more positive surprises rather than the opposite one. So I think that brings the happiness and also positivity to the relocation.
I think all three of you also, the information sharing processes that you have and channels, this helps also a lot to do the expectation management and to bring it to basically as to reality as possible. Of course, then the actual experience is a different thing, but then at least all the information is available. So that's quite important.